It's a time bomb. I mean, there's no right answer. Unfortunately, there's a lot of different views on immigration, and I think the views are very volatile. If you're for immigration, for relaxing, some of the laws, you're viewed as maybe being lenient. If you're against immigration, you're viewed as being a hardliner. And unfortunately, those folks who have the ability to make the decisions don't want to compromise. They're not willing to sit down and try and figure out what's good for America and what's good for the people of America. And that sometimes creates challenges. People get caught up in what they believe, and they don't care whether anybody else believes it or not. They're more concerned about whether or not they can get elected. They're more concerned about whether or not they can survive. Many of them avoid that without understanding or considering the fact that the reason they're there is to do the right thing, and that sometimes the right thing is difficult.
I do not feel like we're going to get immigration reform, workers reform, any of those things addressed. It is too political of a hotbed. Unless you're not ready to go up for election again and you don't care about your party affiliation, most politicians don't want to tackle it. They feel that it is just so polarizing that they'll lose voters. And we're supposed to be doing laws and creating policy that are going to benefit not only our citizens, but those people that the Statue of Liberty welcomes with open arms.
We have over 50 million Hispanics in this nation. If we model the teachings of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and if we mobilize our people across this country and have a Hispanic social and civil rights movement, we would push back against the xenophobia and against the nativism that right now permeates every sector of our society.
Nobody wants to touch that because that's a hotbed, especially in such a terrible time. We're in a bad situation here. The United States is in a state of economic decline. They're worried, their fear of the community is that we're believing to take the jobs of that our people are taking the jobs of other people in this country. Well, I'll tell you honestly, you have to have conviction and commitment to your community, and I'll tell you, I don't know if any of the congressmen and senators really care about what's happening to this community.
I think they're more cautious, but I really don't understand. We really support meaningful immigration reform, and it's very, very clear that we can't conduct business normally without the impact of the many, many contributions that immigrants make to this country, whether legal or illegal. We support meaningful immigration. However, we just can't package everybody up and send them home. We need to work on meaningful immigration reform that will allow the many immigrants that have come to this country to continue to help the business engine of our economy.
It can be very polarizing. I think that there are a few brave leaders out there that are willing to address the issue. We are, as an association, at the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, we urge the administration and Congress to pass comprehensive immigration reform that respects the concept of family, that allows this country to continue to draw upon the rest of the world and attract the best and brightest, so that we can continue to be the leading economy on the globe.
Legislators are afraid because a legislator, unlike a business person, okay, or a community leader, they're in there and they only can work as long as they're in office. So remaining in office becomes their most important goal. Unfortunately, what happens is their pursuit often of the election becomes the most important goal. And everything that they went to the legislature to do, whether it's the state or the national one, takes a second place. Because if they're not there, they're not going to be able to do it. So it's a really difficult issue, and that's why sometimes they seem to be MIA, missing in action.
They have to be very cautious, and I think that they need to watch every single word that they speak about the subject. We are in an election year, and we don't know which party's going to come out with a new bill or a new reform. So things could be one way right now and could change very quickly a month from now or 2 months from now. So they have to be very careful and actually set a plan until the elections on how they speak in regards to the matter.
Immigration, it sounds very, I understand what they're saying on paper, their jobs. They think immigrants are going to take their jobs, and so that's why they're trying to keep them out. They don't like illegal immigrants taking American jobs, okay? But I believe making immigration so hard is splitting up families. They have these raids. They deport families. It's crazy what they do. And this is America. They were immigrants. Everyone were immigrants. So I think it's really unfair. They're being way too cautious. And they should work on making like governments in other countries better so everyone doesn't have to run into the U.S. to have some kind of life, because it's just wrong.
I feel like they're talking it more than they have before, but they can talk about it more and do more things, like the DREAM Act that has impacted us in different ways too.
Implications for every segment of our country, be it the private sector, the public sector, government, and the economy. So I think that they are definitely keenly aware of its implications, and I think more so because of the current economic climate. But it's always been something that they've looked at very seriously and very carefully.
As a fellow from CHC, I cannot comment on issues relating to immigration.
I think they're a little cautious about it because I don't know, because they don't know which way to lean, because there's upsides and there are downsides to it.
They can't avoid it, they can't ignore it, and I really think they're being cautious, but I think they're moving along. It's just a very complex issue, but I think they're working on it.
We've been working with the DREAM Act through Einstein, and we know we've been trying to push it through congressmen, but I don't know how they've been reacting to it.
The feeling is that to polarize the community, some people get elected just by polarizing and making them afraid of a big, ghost over there, and the Hispanic population that is undocumented unfortunately fits that. If you layer that on top of that, the real issues that exist with some of the undocumented population, that is, what's filtering through the borders, the drugs and the violence, what's happening along, the border, it's another issue that really affects the way, the whole country sees it.
It's hard as an elected official to be a risk taker in these days because the dialogue is turned more emotional and more on attack mode versus a calm dialogue. So I can definitely see how if someone in the majority of their area that they represent doesn't support it, well, it'll be difficult to discuss it because the electorate that elected official represents doesn't support it. Now, can that elected official at least provide a dialogue? Sure. But it all depends on how you organize that dialogue.
I think they are. I think the citizens have raised the issue to a big profile issue, so a lot of people are aware and they're thinking about that issue when they go to the voting booth. So I think officials have to really think twice about what they say on that issue.
Definitely, because that's definitely a delicate topic right now. We're going through a crisis, and I think that people don't realize the seriousness of it. So the elected officials do have to be very careful with how they talk about immigration.
Of course. I do think that.
A lot of people are afraid to lose their positions because if they vote pro-immigrant, anti-immigrant, because you see all these anti-immigrant factions making all this noise, but you don't see the advocates for immigration as much. And so they've dominated, the few have dominated the media, if you will, and they've scared the people who are the representatives and saying, well, I'm being threatened that all these voters are now going to vote me out of office because of my votes on immigration. Well, come November, there won't be that excuse. Come November, if they're still in office, they are going to have to produce.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think so. Because the worst thing is to say the wrong thing and then your career's gone. So yeah, for sure. I think, but that's corporations, everything, everyone. Like for instance, corporations are, officials in corporations, they don't talk a lot about offshoring. If you notice nowadays, they don't, because that's not very sexy anymore, and you can be misinterpreted. So yeah, definitely.
It's really hard to tell which politicians are doing good things for Hispanics and which ones are hurting immigrants and Latinos.
I think they are, and they should be. They should study more before they speak.
It's a big issue right now, and I think that if you just say whatever you want to say, people are going to look at you in a certain way.
I really don't have a comment on that.
The topic of immigration specifically, we don't really take a stance one way or the other. At the end of the day, we have a product and a service that we want to make accessible to all consumers. And so we really are in a position where we support anybody who we can identify and validate who they are, who they say they are, and provide products and services to that group. But I would say that in this day and age, there has been a higher scrutiny and tendency to be more cautious around the topic in general.
Definitely, you know, it's hard to talk about that. I mean, my opinion is they've been not probably thinking about weight. You know, it's they need to take actually final decisions, and they're just waiting for it. They don't really want to actually express, or they don't really want to say everything about what the final decision.
They have to be cautious. I think what they have to do first is understand what this immigration issue is all about before they really, you know, talk about it, and also help to enhance legislations to assist us. A lot of times we hear things and from a third party, and it may or may not be facts.
The smart thing I've been told is to keep quiet. The smart thing is to hide in the tall grass and let the issue kind of go away and just worry about getting yourself elected. And unfortunately, many of my colleagues are taking that advice on this issue. I hope it's momentary. I hope they realize that we have a huge problem that's getting worse in this country, and that they'll come back with a little more gumption, a little more spine to tackle this very difficult problem.